Imagine waking up one morning and discovering you've transformed into a monstrous insect, not a nightmare, not a metaphor, but your new reality. This is the world of Franz Kafka, a world where life makes no sense, where systems crush the individual, where guilt is inherited and freedom is an illusion. The word Kafkaesque has entered our language to describe situations so absurd, so oppressive, so nightmarishly complex, that logic itself collapses. But here's the strange truth. Behind Kafka's terrifying stories lies a strange philosophy. A philosophy that whispers to us about alienation, about meaninglessness, about the way modern life itself devours the human soul. So today, we are stepping inside the Kafkaesque mind, a mind that is as unsettling as it is prophetic, a mind that reveals not only the absurdity of the world, but also the strange possibility of freedom within it. To understand the Kafkaesque, we must first understand the man behind it. Franz Kafka was born in Prague in 1883, the son of a dominating father and a fragile mother, a child who felt crushed between family expectations and his own fragile sense of self. He was brilliant, meticulous, but painfully insecure. By day, Kafka worked in an insurance office, buried under endless paperwork. By night, he wrote feverishly, strange, haunting stories that would one day define him. And yet, Kafka never believed in his own work. He ordered that all of his writings be destroyed after his death. It was only because of his friend Max Brod that his novels, The Trial, The Castle, The Metamorphosis, survived at all. But Kafka was not just writing fiction. He was dissecting reality itself. His stories were mirrors of the bureaucratic madness, the invisible oppressions, and the silent loneliness of the modern world. In Kafka's eyes, life was not a straight path. It was a maze with no exit. And the terrifying part? We are all trapped inside it. Think of being caught in a system that makes no sense. Endless phone calls with automated machines. Paperwork that requires more paperwork. Rules without explanation. Punishments without crimes. This is the Kafkaesque condition, the absurd collision between the human being and the cold, indifferent machine of society. In Kafka's novel, The Trial, the protagonist, Joseph K., is arrested one morning, but no one tells him what crime he has committed. He spends the rest of his life trapped in a process that has no beginning and no end. It's not justice. It's not law. It's a nightmare of endless procedures. The Kafkaesque is not just absurdity. It's the suffocating feeling of being trapped in an absurdity. You cannot escape. It is the workplace where decisions are made by invisible higher-ups. It is the government form that demands information you cannot possibly provide. It is the modern world itself, endlessly complex, yet frighteningly empty. To live in the Kafkaesque is to feel powerless. But in that powerlessness, Kafka suggests something even darker. Perhaps this is not a mistake. Perhaps this is the truth of human existence. Kafka never called himself a philosopher. But his vision foreshadowed one of the greatest movements of the 20th century, existentialism. Like Sartre, like Camus, Kafka saw the absurdity of life. But while Camus spoke of rebellion against the absurd, Kafka showed what it feels like to live inside it. Kafka's characters are trapped. They search for meaning in a world that gives them none. They struggle against faceless powers, against walls that never break. Existentialists asked, "What do we do when life has no meaning?" Kafka answered with silence, with images of men lost in endless corridors, with characters who die without explanation. And yet, inside this darkness, there is a strange kind of truth. Kafka forces us to confront the uncomfortable possibility that meaning is not given, that we are abandoned in a world without answers. And perhaps, just perhaps, our task is not to find meaning, but to endure its absence, to live anyway, to keep walking through the labyrinth, even if no exit exists. No discussion of Kafka is complete without the Metamorphosis. Gregor Samsa wakes up one morning and finds himself transformed into a monstrous insect. Why? We are never told. But the story is not about the reason. It is about the reaction. Gregor is rejected by his family. He is hidden, shamed, and ultimately discarded. The Metamorphosis is not just a horror story. It is a metaphor for alienation, for how society treats those who are different, for how families abandon those who can no longer serve their roles. Gregor is not a monster. He is us, the worker who gives his life to his job, the son who sacrifices for his family, until one day he is no longer useful, and suddenly he is an insect. Kafka's message is chilling. In a world obsessed with utility, to stop being useful is to stop being human. The Kafkaesque horror is not the insect. It is the indifference of the world around it. There is another theme haunting Kafka's work: guilt. In the trial, Joseph K. is guilty of a crime he does not know. In the castle, the protagonist is endlessly judged by an unseen authority. Kafka's universe is filled with guilt that cannot be explained, and punishments that cannot be escaped. But this was not just fiction. Kafka himself lived with overwhelming guilt. Guilt for disappointing his father, guilt for his fragile health, guilt for failed relationships, guilt for simply existing. In Kafka's eyes, guilt was not the result of wrongdoing. It was the condition of being alive. We are guilty not because we have sinned, but because the world itself condemns us without reason. This strange philosophy echoes ancient theology, existential dread, and modern psychology. It is the weight many of us still feel, that deep, nameless shame that we cannot quite explain. Here is the paradox. Kafka's world is suffocating, oppressive, and absurd. And yet, by confronting this absurdity, a strange kind of freedom emerges. When we realize the system makes no sense, We stop expecting it to make sense. When we see that meaning is not given, we are free to create our own. When we understand that guilt is inevitable, we can stop chasing innocence and instead simply live. The Kafkaesque forces us into despair, but if we can endure it, we may discover a strange resilience, a freedom not outside the absurd, but inside it. Franz Kafka died young, at the age of 40, from tuberculosis. He never saw his works published. He never imagined his name would become an adjective. And yet today, the word Kafkaesque is more relevant than ever. We live in a world of endless bureaucracy, of digital labyrinths, of rules we cannot understand, and systems that do not care. But to read Kafka is not just to sink into despair. It is to confront reality with open eyes. It is to see the absurdity of existence and to keep going anyway. Inside the Kafkaesque mind, we discover not answers, but questions. Questions that strip away illusion and force us to see life as it is. And maybe that is Kafka's strange philosophy, that even when life is absurd, meaningless, and crushing, to face it is an act of courage. To live inside the Kafkaesque and still move forward is the truest rebellion of all. Franz Kafka once wrote, "A book must be the axe for the frozen sea inside us." And his books remain just that, axes, not to comfort us, not to save us, but to shatter the frozen illusions and force us to awaken to the terrifying, beautiful strangeness of being alive.